Freemasonry is this fertile ground for conspiracy theories.
According to Masonic ritual, if you break your oaths, you will be murdered.
There are evil people using this organization for evil ends.
We are visible, we are known, and we do meet in private.
The biggest secret about Freemasonry is that there are actually no secrets.
They don't want to tell us what they're really doing.
Maybe we are trying to take over the world.
Tonight, the chilling link between a millionaire's suicide, the sudden death of a pope, and the strange rituals of the Freemasons. From the White House to the great banking houses of Europe, Freemasons helped to make the modern world. Are they still in control? Does this secretive brotherhood maintain sinister links to money, politics, and power around the world? The conspiracy theories are out there. Now, we give you the truth. They are the world's oldest, largest, and the most mysterious brotherhood. 5 million Freemasons who meet behind closed doors in lodges around the world, performing secret rituals and forging secret bonds. A fraternity that is fertile ground for rumors of conspiracy and evil.
My name's Ian Markham, and I'm not a Freemason.
A lot of the people I talk to are into conspiracy theories. In fact, most of us have conspiracy theory potential. The conspiracy theory you find most attractive says something quite deep-seated about your underlying worldview.
I'm John Hamill, and I'm a Freemason. I think there is something in human nature that likes a mystery. I find conspiracy theory fun, despite the fact that I spend a lot of time arguing against it and arguing against the conspiracy theories that come out relating to Freemasonry. It's as basic as people mistrust what they don't know about.
You may think of the Masons as the lodge your grandfather joined with his army buddies, but for 300 years, the Masons have been suspected of everything from political conspiracy to first-degree murder. Early on a springtime morning in 1982, a London postal worker discovers a well-dressed gentleman hanging from Blackfriars Bridge. But when the police arrive, they quickly discover that this is no ordinary suicide, if it is suicide at all. The passport in the dead man's pocket is a forgery. He's carrying $15,000 in cash, and stuffed down his trousers are 7 bricks. The dead man is Italian financier Roberto Calvi, aged 62.
My name is Conrad Geringer. I am not a Freemason. Roberto Calvi was the man in charge, the director of Banco Ambrosiano, which was at the center of a vast financial scandal that began in the 70s and culminated with his suicide in 1982 when his body was found dangling under Blackfriars Bridge in London.
At the time of his death, Calvi was hiding out in London and in disguise. He'd been convicted of illegally transferring $27 million out of Italy. Banco Ambrosiano's main shareholder was the Vatican Bank. Calvi, known as God's banker, was also under suspicion for siphoning off more than $1 billion of Banco Ambrosiano funds into Vatican accounts.
At the same time, he's a member of the most notorious lodge in Masonic history.
The lodge is called Propaganda 2, or P2.
Propaganda 2 was a lodge which was set up with the intentions of being an organization that could bring about political change in Italy, and included politicians and the military and journalists.
The brothers are rumored to be plotting a right-wing coup. They call themselves Fratineri, or Blackfriars. And now, here is Brother Calvi, swinging from Blackfriars Bridge. Later, we'll reveal what really happened to God's banker. But the Calvi case is just one of a multitude of alleged Masonic conspiracies. Welcome to a mysterious world where truth and myth dance together in the shadows with the world's 5 million Freemasons at the center of it all.
People are naturally suspicious anytime influential people or groups of people are meeting in relative secrecy. I think it's normal to suspect that something might be going on.
The origins of Masonic secrecy lie in medieval times with the working stonemasons, emulated by Freemasonry's founders. In a time when travel was difficult and strangers suspicious, Masons moved across Europe building cathedrals and castles. They identified themselves to each other with secret words and symbols.
I'm Brent Morris, and I'm a Freemason. The Freemasons knew certain secrets. They knew how to cut stone so it would be as strong as possible if they put it across a lintel. They knew how to make arches. Very importantly, they knew how to make squares. By the time modern Freemasonry is formed in the early 1700s, the trade secrets are no longer important.
The so-called secrets, as far as we're concerned, are restricted to the thing that everybody makes a joke about, the handshakes and the passwords. They're used as a test of membership. If I go to somewhere where I'm not known, I will be tested, and if I can produce the proofs, they're sort of like a Masonic PIN number, if you like.
But it becomes a very important symbol. Once you have become a Mason, you are entitled to be inside the closed door. You're entitled to be in the inner circle.
Each lodge binds its members with bizarre initiation ceremonies that even the lodge down the street may not follow. While Freemasonry has no central authority, a myriad of branches and endless variations of rites and rituals, it does have a common goal: the attainment of secret knowledge.
I'm Jim Mars, and I'm not a Mason. In man's prehistory, the gods handed down their knowledge of civilization to selected illumined ones, okay? And it was these illumined ones who carried on this knowledge, which became the underground stream of knowledge.
We may never know what the secret knowledge is, but conspiracy theories abound that a handful of men who possess it ultimately rule the world. In 1776 in Bavaria, these Dark Lords formed a secret society called the Illuminati.
The Bavarian Illuminati, which was a very subversive organization intent on totally toppling the royal thrones of Europe, as well as the church, through any means possible.
Also in 1776, another radical group, America's Founding Fathers, were following Freemasons Benjamin Franklin and George Washington on a path to independence from the British King. They fared better than the Illuminati, who were outlawed by the King of Bavaria. But the Illuminati did not disappear.
They were forced to go underground. Well, they rolled themselves into Freemasonry to continue this underground stream of knowledge that predates our written history.
The survival of the Illuminati is a popular internet fantasy. Conjecture is that they still exist today in the guise of Freemasons, and that powerful men from George W. Bush to Bill Gates are among them.
My name is Neil Bidnick, and I'm a Freemason who is a member of the Grand Lodge of the State of New York. People have always wondered what we are all about, and there is some mystery about it. We have, of course, very famous worldwide and nationalistic people like a George Washington, who was a member, a Lafayette, Steuben, Garibaldi from Italy, Simon Bolivar from South America.
Masons were key players in the revolutions that made the modern world in America and France, Turkey and South America.
All those people all had one thing in common: they were all Masons. So naturally, some sort of conspiracy theories would develop around them.
But that was long ago. Could the conspiracy still be alive in the 20th century?
I tell you, friends, we'll never be able to call this country our own until it's a country without. Without what? Without Negroes. Without alien foreigners. Without Catholics. Without Freemasons. You know these people.
What's wrong with the Masons? I'm a Mason.
Adolf Hitler certainly thought so. Hitler believed that Freemasons and Jews were entwined in conspiracy to control the world and to overthrow him. As a secretive society, the Masons were vulnerable to suspicion.
You had this group of people that was international in scope, regulating themselves, communicating with each other across state borders. I think it would be very easy to feel that that would be a threat to some sort of autocratic power.
Even before he seizes power, Hitler writes an essay condemning Freemasonry, yet he proclaims that his own Nazi party should emulate their use of rituals, symbols, and oaths. The Nazis organized exhibits featuring materials looted from lodges across Germany, twisted to implicate a Jewish Masonic threat to the Aryan master race. And on the infamous Kristallnacht in 1938, organized crowds chant "Death to Jews and Freemasons," a cry that proves tragically true.
There's a lot of hostility to Freemasonry. Hitler sent almost 200,000 Freemasons to death camps simply for being Freemasons.
In more recent times, the 1988 Covenant of the Islamist Resistance Movement, Hamas, claims that Freemasonry, like the Lions and Rotary Clubs, are part of the same secret society, cells of saboteurs founded as part of a Zionist plot to control the world. It also vows to obliterate them. After the break, a secret ceremony that goes tragically wrong. The Freemasons are the world's oldest and largest fraternity, making their secret meetings seem sinister and evil.
People had got into their heads, we've never really been able to discover why, that we are this conspiracy who are trying to run the world.
In the 21st century, it takes just 7 men to make a Masonic lodge, 1 million to make a movement, but only 1 webmaster to spread a conspiracy theory around the world.
My name is KRP McNeil Smith, and I am not a member of a lodge of free and accepted Masons. How many members in the police department in the senior ranks are Masons? And how many members at City Hall are Masons? What are they doing? Who gets awarded contracts? What is going on in the background? They're cutting corners. They're favoring each other. They basically think they made the country, it's theirs, and they're above government.
The theme is familiar. They are in control, and we are helpless to stop them. Conspiracy lovers have been accusing the Freemasons of murder for centuries. In 2004, they got exactly what they were looking for.
God.
It happened here, New York.
My name is Stephen Bullock. I'm not a Mason. The shooting of William James begins in a club connected with a Masonic lodge, the Fellowcraft Club. This group, which is made up of Masons, was holding an initiation, and they were bringing in William James.
At one stage, the newcomer was asked to stand near a shelf stacked with cans.
James had gone through most of the initiation process, and he had come to the point where there was going to be a mock shooting, which a member of the club was going to pull out a gun, shoot blanks, and then some cans next to the initiate were to be knocked over by someone next to the cans.
The gun was supposed to fire blanks, and the cans would come crashing down. But the 76-year-old who fired it was packing real heat as well.
What happened tragically was that the person with the gun reached in his pocket, pulled out a loaded gun rather than the actual gun with the blanks in it. He shot and killed William James.
Critics of Freemasonry finally had their smoking gun. The brothers' claims of an accidental murder with no connection to legitimate Masonry satisfied the police, but professional unbelievers had a field day.
Suddenly you have this kind of sensational case for the Freemasons of New York. This is a kind of awful situation.
The headline in the papers over here was "Mason shot in initiation ceremony." There's been so much outlandish stuff written and spoken about Freemasonry. The tendency was to immediately believe simply shooting Freemason Masonic building, somebody was shot during an initiation ceremony.
The Fellowcraft Club is connected with the lodge, meets in the lodge building, but yet is not actually part of the lodge. It's a voluntary organization that in a way created its own rules, its own rituals, and to a great extent, its own membership policies. Actual Masonic rituals, the official rituals, do not have guns involved with them. I think there's no doubt that the man who shoots William James was actually just carrying a gun for his personal use. He had no desire to shoot William James. Freemasonry is this fertile ground for conspiracy theories. Anyone who wants to create an idea about people going out and secretly doing something to change the world almost always sort of come back to Freemasonry in the end.
It's been that way since the very first expose of Freemasonry in the 1720s. To outsiders, those secret handshakes and symbols have always seemed to be a cover-up for devilish doings. Masonry's supposed connection to the devil can be traced to 1871, when an American named Albert Pike, a Confederate general, newspaper publisher, and Grand Master Mason, wrote Morals and Dogma, referred to as the Occult Bible of Freemasonry. It is still in print and given to all 32nd degree Masons. Pike links Masonry to ancient Egypt and to mystery religions. Notably, he makes a reference to Lucifer as the bringer of light, the son of the morning. For Christians, Lucifer is one of the names of the devil. But in the Roman pre-Christian traditions Pike was referring to, Lucifer was a poetic name of the morning star. Whatever Pike's intention, his book fueled a new set of conspiracy theories. One of the darkest ties Masonry to history's goriest unsolved murder mystery. In the 1880s, Freemasonry is at its peak in the United Kingdom, the land where it began. The roster of Master Masons includes the Duke of Clarence, later to be crowned as King Edward VII, and many lesser men. But then, a scream pierces the London night. And then another. 5 women. 5 murders. In a letter to a London newspaper, the taunting killer conjures for himself a new identity: Jack the Ripper.
My name's Philip Hutchinson. I'm a Jack the Ripper historian and tour guide around the streets of the East End. At 1:44 a.m, the body of Catherine Eddowes was discovered by PC Edward Watkins in Mitre Square, about a 5-minute walk from where we're now standing in Goulston Street. There has been Masonic references placed upon the murder. Firstly, inverted V's were placed on Catherine Eddowes' cheeks. Some people have claimed if you combine the 2 V's upturned, you get the letter M, denoting a Mason. Secondly, the murder took place in Mitre Square. Mitre and a square both being parts of Masonic iconography. And thirdly, part of Catherine Eddowes' apron was removed, of course the apron having obvious reference. To the side here is Wentworth Model Dwellings, built the year before the murders in 1887. And at 2:20 a.m, PC Alfred Long, who'd been drafted in from A Division in Westminster, had been patrolling this area of Goulston Street. He found nothing unusual, but he came back here at 2:55 a.m. And as he passed by this doorway, which led to rooms 108 to 119, just inside where this door jamb is, he found half a white apron covered in blood and feces. This had actually belonged to Catherine Eddowes, and the killer had cut it away from the body and used it to wipe his knife clean and wipe his hands as he ran away from the murder scene. But it's writing that was found on the wall directly above the apron, which links to the Masons. Although these bricks are now painted white, underneath the original bricks are black. And on the inside face of the door jamb, directly above the apron, someone had scrawled in white chalk the words, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing if you believe PC Alfred Long," or "The Jews are not the men that will be blamed for nothing if you believe Detective Sergeant House from the City Police."
To some, The words are an echo of one of Freemasonry's most secret and important ceremonies, the infamous Third Degree, reenacting the murder of biblical stonemason Hiram Abiff by 3 jealous workers known as Jubilah, Jubilo, and Jubilum. Could these have been the Ripper's Jews?
Grandmaster Hiram Abiff, I heard you cavilling with Jubilah and Jubilo. From them you have escaped, but from me never. My name is Jubilum.
Almost immediately, the cryptic words are erased by a senior police official. Is it a cleanup or a cover-up? The real Jack the Ripper is never identified or arrested. No one accuses the Masons until nearly 100 years later, when British author Stephen Knight writes a BBC documentary, then releases a book called The Final Solution, claiming to prove that the serial killer was in fact a Freemason named Sir William Gull, a surgeon to the royal family. Gull was to kill the Catholic shopgirl who had secretly married the future king and given birth to his child.
Obviously, there would have been a scandal had it actually got leaked that the heir to the throne, as the Duke of Clarence was, had got married and had a baby with a Catholic shopgirl. Clearly, the person who killed the Ripper victims showed a degree of skill with a knife. People then jumped onto the idea that the Ripper would have been Sir William Gull.
At 71, and already the victim of a crippling stroke, Dr. Gull may be too frail to carry out the savagery himself. But his role in a palace cover-up of a real royal killer tantalizes writers and filmmakers.
Since the Stephen Knight book, that even ripperologists themselves, apart from the lunatic fringe in the ripperologists, accept that it is a conspiracy theory, that there is no historical fact in it.
Freemasonry is something that is so covered in myth and ritual and mystery and lack of knowledge by the common man, and so people think if they can link Freemasonry to it, that's going to explain things because they don't know about Freemasonry. Therefore, because they don't know about Jack the Ripper, everything fits together and they can put it down to that without having to delve further into the human psyche.
Coming up, the irrefutable Masonic link to the deadly conspiracy that destroyed God's banker. Suspicion of Masonic conspiracies is as old as the order itself, a tantalizing mixture of facts and fear. The alleged connection between Freemasonry and famous crime cases like those of Jack the Ripper and Roberto Calvi are a staple of the internet conspiracy industry, led by KRP McNeil Smith's Freemasonry Watch.
I think it's very troubling. The farther you go into it, the more troubling you get. This is the fact of life in the English-speaking world, that they basically run the country. We're supposed to be progressing as a society, becoming more open and democratic, and I think the old boys network is, it's in the past, and it should be really brought to an end, and they shouldn't be allowed to get away with it anymore.
In almost every mysterious and controversial event, from Jack the Ripper to the assassination of John F. Kennedy, you can, if you look hard enough, find Masonic involvement, but then there shouldn't be any big surprise since there are so many Masons.
To Mr. Smith and his allies, the evil hand of Freemasonry is evident in every aspect of American life.
I'm Susan Gonzalez, a woman Freemason, New York City. It's lack of knowledge that people want to involve Masons in these conspiracy theories. My favorite one is that there is a white lodge out there somewhere that's manipulating all of the other lodges at a higher level, and that they're in control of the world power. We don't discuss any type of dogma or politics. So, I mean, that wouldn't be a possibility. Whether there are Masons out there that may have some private agenda, who knows? I guess anything's possible.
Freemasonry is like any other secretive, compartmentalized organization, whether it's the CIA or the mafia, in that it's pyramidal in nature. You have a handful of people at the top who know what the true agenda is and what the goals are, and then you filter down through a large membership, many of whom don't have a clue.
That's true, but since the early 1900s, there have been books and exposés of Freemasonry that revealed the content of the rituals. You can walk in here and buy Masonic books. You can go online and find out exactly what they do during their rituals.
Even what we call the modes of recognition, handshake, the passwords, they're the worst kept secrets in history. They were first exposed in a London journal called The Blue Boy in 1724. The reason we still use them is it's a simple test of integrity.
The Masons' history is peppered with exposés. In recent times, Stephen Knight wrote a book claiming the Masons had links to the police and judicial systems in the UK, as well as allegations of corruption and political wrongdoings.
In 1984, when the late Stephen Knight produced his book, The Brotherhood, The Secret World of the Freemasons, that was a PR nightmare. We were in the national and local media on almost a daily basis for 18 months, most of it highly inaccurate.
The Masons don't meet and plot political takeovers, although individual Masons probably have the same sorts of ambitions and temptations as any other segment of the population. Bad people can take over good ideas and good movements and subvert them and use them for bad purposes, but that's because we're human beings. God knows, look what happened in Italy with P2.
P2, the Italian renegade lodge, and its links to the death of Brother Roberto Calvi, has the hallmarks of a real Masonic conspiracy. "25 years later, Calvi's son Carlo still remembers the events surrounding his father's apparent suicide. The Calvi family had fled Italy in fear of their lives. Carlo's mother was waiting to hear from his father, who had traveled to London under a false identity.
We were in Washington, and she received a call from her brother that in the middle of the night that informed that the body had been found in the river. He was supposed to call on that date. He obviously missed the phone call. The conclusion of the City of London police and the pathologist was suicide. I think that both the Italian and the British press was skeptical from the beginning.
I am Rupert Cornwell, and I am not a Freemason. He looked like a man who was under extreme pressure. This was 2 months before he was killed. And he would talk about they being after me and not being specific who they were. He didn't really tell me anything, but it was just the impression of the man was, I've never forgotten it. This was a man who was frightened, who was hunted, and who was, I think, aware that the end probably wasn't that far off.
There was a first examination by a pathologist that was very superficial. We challenged it successfully in front of the High Court. Eventually, there was a civil case that decided in favor of our position. There was there a murder.
The Calvi family never believed that Roberto committed suicide, that he climbed down a ladder under Blackfriars Bridge to hang himself. The body showed no signs of dirt from the climb and no injuries to his neck. They began a 20-year quest for justice.
We have conducted reconstruction under the bridge, which showed that it would have been impossible to walk down the ladder and all the way on the very end of the scaffolding and hang himself the way the body was found. So we were able to show that all that was impossible. We also conducted a reconstruction recreating the whole thing by boat, and we showed that that was possible to conduct the same operation.
In 1998, the Italian courts accepted the new evidence that Calvi had been murdered and that his body had been brought to Blackfriars at high tide and suspended from a noose. Suspicion fell on Calvi's Lodge P2 and its links to the Masons and the Mafia.
Calvi was a member of the P2, along with about 1,000 other people, according to a list of members discovered. The P2 was a kind of renegade, corrupted version of a Freemasons' lodge.
Father was always very cautious when he talked about this. There was quite a bit of concern for himself and for us. In fact, it was one of the reasons why he wanted us to leave Italy.
The other members included bankers, industrialists, Secret Service people, generals, magistrates, politicians, newspaper owners, you name it. Anyone of some influence was as likely as not to be a member of the P2.
In fact, P2 included among its members Silvio Berlusconi, the Italian media mogul and future Prime Minister of Italy.
A man by the name of Licio Gelli, who had a background as a fascist and a supporter of Mussolini. He was a member of the Black Shirts during the Mussolini era. He became active in Propaganda Due and basically took over the lodge and began to use it for his own purposes.
Propaganda Due never was part of mainstream Masonry. It was flying far below the radar of a loosely structured fraternity with no international hierarchy or headquarters. P2's brothers had their eyes on a much bigger prize than moral restraint and self-knowledge: raw power.
Licio Gelli had a plan to basically remake the Italian government along more authoritarian lines. Banco Ambrosiano was loaning money to P2 and serving as a paymaster for some of the people connected with Gelli.
They were amongst those that were more interested in that my father wouldn't return to Italy and expose the activities of the lodge. They also happened to control the police and the security services both in Italy and the UK, and they were instrumental in choosing London as the final destination.
In addition, you find all sorts of speculation around the death. The fact he was hung at Blackfriars, the fact that he was hung in London. There is speculation of his participation and involvement in the London Lodge. The fact he fled to London at all, why would he do that if it wasn't to connect up with Masons in that city?
Bricks and money were found on Calvi's body. The fact that he was hung and his body partly submerged in water were all indications of Masonic ritual.
And it was a very, very definite Masonic connection there. This was Masonic ritual for someone who's violated their oaths.
It's a complicated web and the ultimate Masonic conspiracy story. But eventually, the truth begins to surface as detectives reconstruct the final hours of God's banker. From a frantic call for help from a London hotel room to an ambush in the back of a speeding black cab. The death of God's banker touches off a firestorm of media attention, books and movies. The suspicion grows, linking the pseudo-Freemasons of Propaganda Due to the death of a pope.
There's those who say that he was about to put a clean brush through the dodgy finances of the Vatican.
It is rumored that in early September 1978, John Paul I asked for an investigation into the operations of the Vatican Bank. That on September 28th, he gave his Secretary of State a list of P2 members working for the bank who were to be transferred. On September the 29th, only 33 days after his coronation, the Pope dies suddenly.
There was lots of threads involved here, and in the subsequent court cases, you had mysterious deaths, you had accusations of the involvement of George Herbert Walker Bush and Henry Kissinger and the CIA and the Vatican Bank and Archbishop Mercurios.
Calvi was linked to the P2, Calvi was linked to the Vatican, the Pope John Paul I died in the Vatican, ergo the P2 killed John Paul I. That's the kind of reasoning you're adopting here.
Don't think that everyone who questions what's going on within Freemasonry is just a conspiracy theorist. This was a conspiracy that was very well documented.
You're never going to be able to stop people from fabricating or confabulating conspiracy theories or pointing at a particular group and saying, see, I told you so, this is what's going on. People are always going to believe what they want to believe. And unfortunately, conspiracy theories have a great immunity from truth.
When we return, Pope Benedict, an infamous hoax, and the ongoing battle between Freemasonry and the Roman Catholic Church. Later, we'll reveal the truth about the deaths of Roberto Calvi and Pope John Paul I. But today, there is a new Pope in Rome who is no friend of Freemasonry. Catholics are formally forbidden to join the Brotherhood, a prohibition strongly reiterated as recently as 1983 by Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger of Germany, the man who now sits as Pope Benedict XVI. Freemasonry embraces a plurality of religions, but for Catholics, there can only be one true path to God: Catholicism.
The Masonic order is, as far as I know, is the only one that stresses a belief in God.
On the altar, you'll find the holy books of every great world religion for the purpose of that you ask a man if he believes in a greater power, a power that's larger than himself.
It asks one simple religious question to any man who joins. Do you believe in the God who created the universe? Or do you believe in God? Or do you believe in the supreme architect of the universe? All interchangeable terms. If the man says yes, he's acceptable as a Mason, and no further questions are asked.
The Masonic Constitution states that Freemasonry is not a religion, but it also denies membership to atheists, touching off a long and heated debate.
My name is Stephen Tsoukalis, and I'm not a Mason. The question, can one who is a Christian be a Mason? I answer in the affirmative. Of course they can, just by virtue of the organization allowing Christians to become Mason. The real question, though, if you believe in Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, is should you be a Christian and a Mason?
Go then, my brother, and may the blessings of God accompany you.
It offers something that religion doesn't offer. It offers a system for relating the meaning of yourself to the meaning of the universe, and it offers it in a way which isn't superstitious.
Jesus himself said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. What is Freemasonry doing? Giving these lessons of salvation to those who would reject Jesus Christ. Therein lies the rub with Christianity.
I don't believe the Boy Scouts who promise to do their duty to God, who offer prayers in the name of the great Scoutmaster, are a religion. I don't believe that Freemasonry is religion.
Amen. Despite the Pope's warning, there are thousands of Roman Catholic Masons in North America and overseas, and many priests who look the other way. It's all part of a long and bitter contest for minds and souls, and for dues and donations.
Over the decades and the centuries, there has been the gradual erosion, I think, of ecclesiastical power. Looking at it from the point of a religious organization, maybe they see this as part of a conspiracy and they're going to look for villains.
That isn't the real reason. That's just the superficial reason. The real basis of the conflict between the church and the lodge is over theology. It's a conflict between Jesus, Christ, and Satan.
All the churches have investigated it, and they say it is the occult. And everything I know about the occult comes from the demons. And the head demon is the devil.
If some Roman Catholics believe that Freemasonry is the enemy of the Holy Church, they're not alone. Albert Pike's 1871 reference to Lucifer in Dogma and Morals, that key Masonic text, provided the foundation for an elaborate hoax at the Church's expense.
Leo attacks have stirred up all sorts of things, claiming Freemasonry as being the secret world government, claiming it was anti-clerical.
In the 1880s, this minor French writer is sued for libel and condemned by the Church for a book about the Pope. He has already been thrown out of his own Masonic lodge for announcing that he is an atheist. Taxil resolves to counterattack both the Church and the Freemasons at once. Over the next decade, he produces a continuous stream of books and articles, fawningly pro-Catholic and wildly anti-Masonic. He claims that a beautiful American named Diana Vaughan, who is in direct communication with Albert Pike, has come to him with tales of Masonic devil worship. And the books sell hundreds of thousands of copies across Europe. The mysterious Miss Vaughan never appears in public, making Taxel's tales seem even more haunting and fiendish.
Then when everybody started to investigate it, held a public meeting and said, sorry guys, I was having you on.
Taxel reveals that the books, the devil-worshipping Masons, are all part of an elaborate and profitable hoax, and Diana Vaughan may in fact have been a complete fabrication. More than a century later, conspiracy theorists still quote Leo Taxel as proof that the Masons are an evil cult of Lucifer.
Books that tell the truth don't sell. Conspiracy theory writers make millions, and it's been going on for a long time.
So the circle remains unbroken. The accusations fail to destroy the Masonic movement, and the Masonic movement is unable to stop the flood of accusations.
There has been this long tradition of Freemasonry being involved in conspiracy theory, and not a lot has been done until relatively recently to try and show the other side.
Most of the time, the Masons are believed and the world moves on. But then comes a case like God's banker, Roberto Calvi. With the murder proven in the Italian courts, the hunt is on for the murderers. In 2005, 3 mafia henchmen and 1 woman go on trial at a maximum security prison in Rome on charges of arranging Calvi's murder. A trial that will likely delve into connections between several secretive organizations, the Vatican, P2, and the Mafia, and may last 5 years or more.
When the scandal of P2 and Ambrosiano was unveiled, it looked like P2 was a state within the state, but then if you move to today, maybe just simply the state. That is, that the infiltration has become so extensive that you don't distinguish the interest group from the institutions.
Freemasonry is not a political movement, but I think that generally its ideals would find such an arrangement abhorrent. You have to remember that Mussolini and Hitler were among the main dictators who banned Freemasonry and locked up its leaders and prohibited the lodges from meeting.
Slowly, the truth has begun to emerge about the unsanctioned Masonic lodge called P2, about Vatican millions and mafia debts, the quicksand of secrecy, crime, and vengeance that swallowed Roberto Calvi and left his body to hang from Blackfriars Bridge.
The connection between the Banco Ambrosiano scandal and Freemasonry is very, very peripheral. There were individuals involved who happened to be Freemasons. Many of them were members of this irregular lodge, but there were other groups that were far more into that scandal and mucked up with the illegal money.
It was a clandestine lodge. It wasn't a proper lodge. It wasn't working under any grand lodge. And but it was a wonderful gift to the conspiracy theorists.
In the banking scandal that envelops Roberto Calvi, there are proven links to Vatican intrigue, a financial pyramid that involves the church, the mafia, and Calvi's bank. The death of John Paul I comes just as the scandal breaks, but despite shoddy medical work and a suspiciously hasty embalming, there is no evidence to support the conspiracists' claim that the pontiff was poisoned. A heart attack or stroke is much more likely. When a group of London gentlemen gathered at a pub called the Goose and Gridiron in 1717 and established the modern Freemasonic movement, their intention was to build a new sort of temple, a place where men of intelligence and leisure could explore the meaning of life without the burden of religion. They never could have envisioned what Freemasonry would become, and the conspiracy theories that swirl around the world's oldest and most famous fraternity, its alleged links to devilish cults and unsolved killings, political power and secret plots to rape and rule the world. Masons have been denying these far-fetched claims of evildoing for 300 years with little or no effect.
One problem for Freemasonry is that given it's a secret society, then of course you're searching for clues about the true nature of that society.
We hadn't denied anything in the past, and we hadn't engaged with the media, and it became a sort of knee-jerk reaction that if something went wrong, oh, it'll be the Freemasons behind it.
Taken one by one, Masonic conspiracy theories crumble into dust. A Masonic connection to Jack the Ripper was first made 90 years after the murders in a TV program and a book. The most likely explanation of Pope John Paul I's death remains natural causes, not a cup of poison brewed by a master Mason. William James, accidentally shot to death inside a Masonic hall, was not involved in a mainstream Masonic initiation. And the most likely scenario is that Roberto Calvi was murdered by the Mafia, not his brother Masons. But take all the allegations together and they reveal a key trait of the human soul, a deep-rooted need to organize and explain events beyond our comprehension.
Faith is dissipated in our culture. We're finding it difficult to create patterns and interpret and make sense.
If you can build a conspiracy theory about any group, you're starting to make sense of a chaotic world. You're coming up with reasons for why things that ordinarily wouldn't make sense, all of a sudden they do. And they do because there's an invisible, hidden hand that's secretly operating everything. And that has a certain psychological appeal, even if it's not true.
Freemasonry should be far more open about its purposes and its objectives, because if it doesn't, it's not going to be able to continue with its teaching, and its teachings are worth continuing.
Freemasonry's ideals of morality and self-discipline are undeniably virtuous, and through its quest for self-knowledge, the Brotherhood seeks to make good men better. While conspiracy theories of the most dastardly kind have not been proven, it is fair to wonder if, in some cases, Masonry has also helped to make bad men worse.